Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back to my YouTube channel, the Infinite Inkwell. I'm Lewis and I'm on a journey to discover new ways to tell stories. As you may know from my previous videos, I am currently on a journey looking at video games and how I can look to tell my first story through that medium. One of the biggest issues with starting with a video game is that there are so many different types of video games. Where do I start? What kind of story do I want to tell? What does I want that? I've got a few that I've been looking at. I've done some research and started playing a few. So going back to my own catalogue and started to have a look about what kind of stories I might want to at least start with. Within this, we've got the text adventure. I played a couple of these and was surprisingly entertained by them. The biggest ones that I looked at were actually the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and The World Ends Today, which is a really simple one, but was really enjoyable. Really enjoyable. I thought, these are so simple. There's something I could definitely do here. So that was kind of one of the first places that I looked. Oh, also, weird honorable shout out, Google. If you type in text adventure in your search, then when you get to your results page, if you go to the menu and go to under view, your developer options, and then select JavaScript console, Google built a text adventure right into their browser. And it's all about going around the campus collecting the letters for Google. Really strange, but oddly fun. If you find yourself having a spare minute, go have a look at it. It's kind of cool. Puzzle games are also super common and really easy to pick up and play just for short periods, sometimes with infinite loops, with things like Hexic, and also things like Tetris. Really simple, easy loops which are quite addicting, and it gets harder and harder to make you want to play it further. You have roguelikes like Vampire Survivors and Brotato. I really enjoyed Vampire Survivors. I'm not normally like a roguelike sort of person, but it gave me a lot of pleasure playing this game and really got me into that kind of repetitive loop, especially with the unlockables. And then Brotato is my current addiction, which I probably play every night for about 40 minutes. At least one round, if not two, sometimes far too many. And I end up going to bed late like I did last night. But I really enjoy Brotato, and there's something that's quite nice about it, and both of the animation styles are quite simple but really good. So there's something there that I might look at as well, but I'm not too sure. I think it would be a nice start, because much like the puzzle games that I mentioned before, they're quite simple and formulaic, and it's just adding a little bit of something extra on top. I think the challenge that I have with both of those is they're not really telling a story. The whole point of this is to tell a story. But I think there's something in there that I might come back and have a look at, and how I could potentially tell a story with that format. Racing games have been around forever. They very rarely tell a story. Is that probably the right type of storytelling that I want? But then you've got games which incorporate it really well into storytelling, like Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto wouldn't be what it is without the driving, right? It's the clues in the title. There's a lot of driving in those games, and it's a component of it. It's a gameplay piece, but it's not necessarily imperative to the story, right? If people walked around to do some of this stuff, the story about the characters would still exist without the mechanic. But in those games, they're quite open and sprawling, and your open world storytelling is very different, where you've got these immersive areas and elements to it. That's probably quite complex going after an open world game, though. Probably far too complex for my first title. If I had a lot more experience under my belt, maybe I'd consider it, but I don't. So let's probably rule out open world games for now. Shooters are a big thing. First person, third person, doesn't matter. They're huge. So things like Doom, your Rainbow Six titles, Call of Duty, Battlefield, all of these titles have existed for a long time. The single player is normally pretty lacking. The story in there is never that strong. I actually quite liked some of the storytelling from the Rainbow Six Vegas era, which was not the best, but it's better than some of what we've seen more recently. The mechanics are pretty strong for a shooter, and quite simple for some of the basics, but I don't know how it's going to allow me to tell a better story. That kind of gameplay style hasn't really been for me for a bit, unless it's part of something else. So I'm probably going to take a pass on that. Platformers have told an amazing set of stories over the years. Going back to Mario, Metroid actually created its own genre within the platformer type. Then more recently, we've had Lego games. Lego games are fantastic. They do a really good job at telling the story, with a lot of fun elements that only Lego could do. But then you've got smaller platformers like Hollow Knight or Super Meat Boy. Braid. Braid was huge. Again, small solo developer doing something kind of cool on their own. And they did an amazing job at telling a story. Super Meat Boy actually has the very kind of basic story of saving his girlfriend. The mechanics are relatively simple and they can scale quite well. So there's probably something to a platformer title or a Metroidvania to help me tell a story. And maybe it's a bit big for the first game, but I think there's something to it for a second, if I go and do a second. I think it's got potential. Then you have your action adventure games, Tomb Raiders, Uncharted, Soul Reaver, kind of a lot of your big things that combine a lot of the different aspects that we've already spoken about with some of the customization, but probably too much for the first one. Well, my first game. RPGs are pretty cool. RPGs are really complex and they normally do a fantastic job of letting you tell the story you want to. So when we look at things like Cyberpunk, Mass Effect, Fallout, Baldur's Gate, a lot of RPGs spend the time letting you build your character and give you the opportunity as you're going throughout the world to make decisions and change the story. Now that could be awesome. You're telling your own story and everybody who plays it will tell their own version of their story. That's got potential, and giving that player choice to tell their own version of the story could be quite interesting and kind of overlaps a little bit with how the text adventures that I played allowed you to kind of choose what you wanted to do. Maybe, but probably not. It's, again, RPGs are huge. And if we look at a solo dev doing this, Pirate Software, Thor, has spent 7 years, I think, building out Heartbound, an experimental RPG, which is fantastic. I really enjoy playing that, but it's a lot of time going into that one game because of all of the different variations and things that could happen through a single decision. And he said many times that they still haven't seen it all. It's in early access right now, but there are lots of different options and the thousands of different decisions you can make to get different stories. I mean, it would be damn brave to start there, but I don't think I am. And then we have card games. Card games are something that I've enjoyed a lot recently, playing them in the real world. Monopoly Deal, and more recently, Let's Dig for Treasure. Then there's other games that I play on my own on my phone all the time, like Marvel Snap. I've spent far too many hours playing Marvel Snap while doing other stuff, and I have been trying to cut down, but it's just quite addictive playing this simple card game and trying to outwit other people. There's a lot of strategy involved, and I really enjoyed that. Then we have strategy games where you're actually looking at different ways to solve a problem or to take over a map or to run a city, and I've spent probably hundreds of hours playing things like Age of Empires, really getting into it and playing either online but mostly on my own and seeing what kind of awesome stuff that I could build and the civilizations that I could grow. Some of them have told stories, and Age of Empires did a really good job of that through its progression system. So you'd pick a particular era. So for instance, I remember the first campaign is William Wallace, the second one is around Joan of Arc, and then playing that out in a series of missions is actually quite fun. Command & Conquer did the same, right? And anybody who's played those games will remember you had 2 discs. You could play as the GDI or Nod. You played different sides of the same story and you could push forward and it would change things for you. That's actually pretty cool. But I don't think it's what I'm gonna go with for my story, especially for the first one. So many complicated elements to that. You're building economies. You're then having budgets where you have to spend or save for different units, for certain buildings. How do you manage a lot of that diplomacy and politics that's there? That's really complicated. Given that this is going to be my first game, I'm going to immediately write off MMOs. Anything that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of different mechanics, a lot of consideration for servers, absolutely not. I think MMOs I'm far from. Even if I was to pick something a little bit more on the simple side, like Sea of Thieves, which when it first came out was really basic. And if you go back and have a look at any of the original footage that was created to demo Sea of Thieves, it's quite basic. And it's come a long way since then, but still too much of a stretch for me as my first game. Fighting games are another one, which could be an interesting way to explore a story, but it's a little confrontational. He says, having spoken about shooters a fair chunk, but I'm not sure I'd be doing the best work because there's also a lot of complexity in those mechanics. Fighting games normally have a little bit of story and there's like some crazy in-depth lore. In fact, I believe Brian Cox did the latest Tekken trailer, which was all about exploring lore, which is mental. And I don't think that I could tell the right story for me through a fighting game. I grew up playing things like Tekken, but I'm still not sure that a fighting game would be the right medium for me. It's a little too confrontational. I realise that some of the other stuff that I've spoken about is quite confrontational, but I don't think I'm there. Not yet. You also have your survival titles. Some of those are really good and quite in-depth, but they require a lot of different moving parts in other areas of the world that you're trying to survive in. And when I even look at something like more on the survival horror side, like Alien Isolation, I mean, that scared the crap out of me, but that's probably more on the horror side. But again, I'm not sure I want to tell a scary story right now, but there was a lot of different thinking that went into that. a lot of the artificial intelligence that was built into the alien around reacting to you as the player, which is kind of the same in a survival game, because in any survival game, the world is reacting to you. I don't know, I think it's a bit too complex for what I'm looking for right now. So where does this leave me? Well, given I want to go for something basic, I think I've got a couple of options. Well, I want to start with something basic, that is. So what do I do now? I've gone through and looked at what the different types of games that I might want to start with. Well, I think I would need something simple, which really rules out a lot of the titles that we've spoken about. So definitely rules out RPGs, definitely rules out anything with complex systems in it for my first game, right? Let's get rid of anything with complexity. So really, I think it leaves me with a text adventure or a platformer. Now, that might sound quite finite, but I think I could do a lot with that. Maybe something that blends the two, that combines those elements of decision making which could change things for you, but maybe levels that you can play through and you're jumping around or moving through that world, moving through a set of challenges. I don't know. But I think just having the conversation and starting to understand what I could be looking at from my first is a big step forward, because I need to know where I'm starting when I start filling out my game design document. In my next video, I'm going to talk more about the game design document, what it is, where I got this one from, and why is it important. When we do that video, I'm also going to film actually going through the process of writing my document for my first game. So you can see, okay, well, why do I have to think about these things? What are the elements that I want to consider? So hopefully that'll be the next one. Now I'm thinking about it, we're probably leaning towards that, either text adventure or platform or a combo. Sorry, I realize this is a little bit of a confused one. I've not been feeling well this week. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy the video, maybe hit the like button. That would be really appreciated. And if you want to continue going on the journey, hit subscribe. I'm going to try and put these out every week or every couple of weeks, depending on how much work I get done. So yeah, come with me on this journey and let's build a video game. And maybe try and tell some other stories as we go and do that. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this one over here next. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.